Hey everybody, welcome into Flag for Discussion, episode 74 for Monday, April 6th. My name is Arvell Reese, here as always with Jace Hatfield. And today, Jace, we're putting on a different type of show for everybody. We obviously could talk about all the latest stuff that's been going on in college football, but we do that regularly. April is a special month for us. It's not only the 1 year of this podcast that's coming up, it's not only the month that both of us have many moons ago, but it's also the NFL draft. And we've made it clear for a long time that this isn't an NFL specific show, but when college football and the NFL mesh to meet in the NFL draft, especially for you and I who grew up wanting to be GMs and we nerd out over the NFL draft, we're going to put on a mock draft for a full first round. We're not going 7, a full first round. If we really need content down the road, maybe go 7. But right now, full first round mock draft of the NFL draft. The draft starts on April 23rd in Pittsburgh. That's when the first round will be. It'll go till April 25th. A lot of things cooking for that. We'll talk all about it. Jace, how ready are you to get nerd out a little bit here?
I'm ecstatic. This is such a great sports month, and we'll talk about the draft, but I don't want to overlook, we have the national championship for basketball tonight. We don't know quite the teams at the time of recording that'll be playing in that game, but regardless with who's left, it's going to be a great game, no matter who we get. So we get that tonight. We got the Masters coming up. We got the NFL draft, then post that baseball's in full swing, and Farbode and I, the time you're listening to this, we were on the course together. The swing is loose, getting ready for the summer. Life is good, and I'm ready to talk some drafts.
This might bring the mood down for the show. There's odds of Tiger playing the Masters completely shot now?
I would assume so. We'll see what happens. Yeah, unfortunate for him, but
yeah.
Also, he did to himself.
Okay, so we'll set some ground rules. We'll obviously talk draft regardless as it is, but like I said, we're gonna go through all 32 picks. We're gonna have Jace is gonna flip a coin. That'll decide who gets picked first, and then the other will pick second, and then we'll just go on from there. First 1 through 32. No trades, because we don't want to make it that convoluted of who's trading what. But we really want to discuss a combination of what these teams need, what these teams could use from the draft. The NFL is really unique where you have high expectations for your guys starting day one, especially if you draft them in this round. In the NBA, you have high expectation of probably the top 10 picks. After that, it gets watered down a little bit. In the MLB, you hope to see them in 2 years. If you see a guy in 2 years, wow, what a draft pick.
Yeah.
If you see a guy it's normally 4 to 5 years sometimes that you have to wait for a guy to cook a little bit in the minors. So what are your overall thoughts? I know you have your philosophies on the draft, Jay.
Yeah, I'm a Lions fan, and I know this all too well. So that's where I'm going to start with. One of my biggest frustrations with drafts and why we tend to see the same 8 teams always picking in the top 12. I am not a big, let me take the best player available when I'm a bad team guy. I think a mistake a lot of teams make that are not very good is because they're not very good, they don't pick a direction they want to go. And they just say, well, we're not good. We need talent. Let's bring in the best available player. And they'll aimlessly bring that guy in. And then they don't do anything to build around him. So they do that year after year. And 3 years down the road, that player's in contract talks and the team still stinks. And that guy hasn't really enjoyed his 3 years there. So he leaves, rightfully so. I don't blame him. And then now that team, the bad team, just says, well, now we have this new hole to fill. Let's just go draft the best available. And it's just this cycle over and over. And because I'm a Lions fan, I know this cycle all too well. There's a reason why they draft top 10. I think that if you want to be a good football team, especially in the NFL, you need a direction. You need to say, this is the core that I'm building. This is the style of team I want to build. This is what we're trying to do on which side of the ball. Who can fill that gap for me? Sure, it might be a guy that you could draft at 12, but if he fills that gap for you and you pick at 4, I don't care about the value you lose picking him at 4. Trade back if you really care about value. But take your guy. Take the guy that fills the hole that you have. Take the guy that's going to build the team you look to build. Take the guy that you think can set your team up for actual success. Don't just take the guy that, we lost our star receiver this year because he didn't want to re-sign with us, so I'm going to draft a receiver now. Best case scenario, that receiver pans out and you move laterally. I can't stand when teams just take the best available without a plan. And I hate when teams just like, oh, well, I lost a really good edge rusher this transfer portal, this free agency cycle. So I'm just going to go draft an edge rusher to replace him. Well, you were 3-14 with him. So replacing him, what are you doing here? So you're going to notice like a lot of my picks are not going to be best available. They're going to be like targeted. Here's like the direction that I think this team should go. And this is the way I would do it. And I guess that's one other note to make based on what I'm saying. Farbode and I are not drafting what we predict is going to happen. We are drafting what we would do as the GM. So I think that's an important thing to know as well.
I'll also add this caveat, 2 caveats. One, well, it's either what we would do or like for me, what I think their head coach is thinking or what their GM is thinking to save his job maybe, or like this is the last piece we need to fill my system type of thing. I also will say this, you bring up the same teams every year you're picking. And every year or so, there is a team that doesn't necessarily quote unquote belong in the top 10. Like a couple years ago, it was the 49ers. This year, it's the Chiefs. You could say they belonged in it because they ended the year bad, but it was maybe they had bad injuries or they just had a down year. But consistently as a franchise, those teams have built the right way. They got the quarterback. They have a good offensive line. They have a good defense. Like they just had a down year and they're there. If you look at a team like the top 5 right now, the Raiders, the Jets, the Cardinals, the Titans, and the Giants. The Jets are the only one of that group that's bringing back their coach for this year. And he's going to his 2nd year. I'm not saying like that's not shocking. Like when you're bad, you're going to go fire your coach. But the lack of stability that these organizations have experienced at their GM spot, at their quarterback spot, and at their head coach spot, the most important spots, those have been so few and far between, like stable, that there's a reason they're back here year after year. There's a reason every 3 to 4 years they hire a new GM who sets them into a course of a new building process and kind of just shifts out the old building process. Like the Jets, you could argue the year they traded for Aaron Rodgers, that was a disaster, obviously, but they had a heap ton of young, promising players on the team that Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh were building. But then since they didn't get the quarterback right, they got ran out of town. And half those guys are on different teams because this new administration is trying to take it over and make it better. So we got a lot of work to do to make these teams right, Jace. Do you want to flip the coin? I'll take tails.
All right. So this is going to be the heads. This will be the tails. Shout out my Waste Management coin ball market. It is tails.
All right. So that gives me the first overall pick. By the way, you like my chairs hat?
I do. Shout out chairs. I do love a chair. I've been sitting in those a lot.
Yeah. So, real quick, we had a vendor day at work where all the vendors of our company come in and like give us stuff for free.
Awesome.
American Airlines was there, United Airlines, Alaska. Then this is Herman Miller, and Herman Miller gave us like a chocolate. And I saw this hat on their table. I said, "Can I have the chairs hat instead?" It's a white hat that says chairs. How could you not want it?
Yeah,
so they gave me the chairs hat. I don't know if I'm gonna buy $1,000 chair, but the hat is cool.
Shout out chairs.
Shout out chairs. All right, Jace, you got your mock draft ready in front of you?
Let's do it.
All right, with the first overall pick, my Las Vegas Raiders will select Fernando Mendoza. That's obvious. This is the most obvious pick of the draft. They have been very aggressive under this new regime. Pete Carroll didn't work out there. I really like their GM right now. He comes from the Jason Light, Howie Roseman tree. He knows how to build it the right way. He has everyone keeps bringing up Brady. I think Brady's just putting the people in charge that would get them the right way. I don't know if Brady's necessarily in the pulling the puppet strings of telling them what to do. I think they've been very aggressive this offseason. They've somehow got to keep Max Crosby after the Ravens thing fell apart. And now they need a quarterback. So this is best available quarterback. I'm going to take Fernando Mendoza with the Raiders. Pretty obvious.
Yeah, I like that pick. I like that pick for the Raiders as well. I think they've done a good job setting themselves up to be in the position to need a quarterback, and it worked out really well for them. All right, so now I've got the New York Jets. Speaking of teams that tend to be up here a lot, this is one of them. Now, a lot of mock drafts, and I've heard a lot of experts, there's always the discussion like, should they go Ruben Bain? Should they go David Bailey? Should they go Arvell Reese? I think all of that's bad. I don't think they should go a defensive
Wow.
player. I think the players are great. I have nothing. I think Ruben Bain is awesome. I think Arvell Reese is going to be great. I think David Bailey is going to be great. But I think the Jets, if you look at their defense, it is almost all entirely consistent of just like random NFL players that have been fine throughout the years, combined with just a bunch of free agents that they just signed this offseason. There's nothing on this defense that really like stands out or makes you feel like it's going to be great or it's close to being great. So I don't love the idea of drafting a young star defensive player when you don't really have a path on defense. It's really looking at this defense. It's hard to tell what the direction is, where it's going to go. And it feels like it's a lot away from being really good. However, on the offensive side of the ball, I actually like what they've done getting Adonai Mitchell. I like Garrett Wilson. And I actually they've put in a little bit of investment into the O-line, and they brought back Breece Hall. They want a quarterback. We know that they wanted Dante Moore. I don't see why you would go defensive player this draft and then next draft try and get Dante Moore or a quarterback. Let's help that guy out. You know, if you're going to get a quarterback next year, I like the idea of helping him out now. I don't think you need an immediate wide receiver, but I do think you need some O-line help. I'm going to read, this is a little bit of a reach, and in real life, maybe the Jets can trade back to get him, but I'm going to go Francis Maui-Noa for the Jets
I
here.
love that pick.
I think that if you want Dante Moore and you want a young quarterback and you want to stop drafting at the top, get him some help now. That way, Francis Maui-Noa has a year under his belt by the time you bring in a new QB. And all of a sudden, wow, we actually have two good pass catchers. We have a good running back, and we have a decent O-line. This quarterback actually has a chance to succeed versus grabbing a defensive player with, if you're the Jets, with no direction. So I'm going to go Francis Maui-Noa at number 2. Might be a little bit of a reach for him, but I think it makes the most sense for the direction of this team.
I think you took what I was going to take for the Cardinals next, but
they're in the same boat.
I will say, so I was worried you were going to take Ty Simpson there, that you were like, you got to take a shot on the quarterback. And I was going to say, I don't think he's worth the second overall pick. If he's around at 16 for the Jets, you can take your shot because you got 2 first rounders. Take your shot at one quarterback, see if Ty Simpson works out. I've seen the Arvell Reeses of the world mocked at number 2. Arvell Reese is an elite player. I don't know positional value-wise, linebacker, if I want a linebacker at 2. I think at 2, I would look at, like, the reason I said earlier what the coaches would do, Aaron Glenn. He's probably coaching for his job this season with the Jets. He's made some comments here and there. He also took back play calling as his duty with the Jets. He made a quote at the combine saying, "Play calling is my superpower. I'm gonna take over play calling." And you're right. The offense, for the most part, the offensive line, I think, played every game together. They were like the only team in the league to do that. They were above average for the most part. Wide receiver Garrett Wilson needs to stay healthy. He played, I think he got hurt week 6 or week 8 of this past season, Jace, and he still led the Jets in receiving yards.
That's horrible.
That's how abysmal their passing game was last year. Mm-hmm. So they got Breece Hall. They have at least an experienced offensive coordinator in Frank Reich. We'll see how Geno Smith does back with the Jets. Their offense isn't like world beaters, but they're solid. We'll see. Defensively, I was thinking that Aaron Glenn might want a David Bailey, just a freak athlete. He's going to get after the passer no matter what, and he's going to make it work. So I like the Maui-Noa thing because if you can get a guy like that, and by the way, where did Aaron Glenn come from? Detroit. What was one of the first moves that really started the rebuild in Detroit? Penei Sewell. So I like this pick a lot. And we'll try to, I know we're only through 2 picks. We'll try to go quicker after like the top 5, top 10. But yeah, these are good conversations, I think. All right. So the Cardinals. Here's the interesting part with the Cardinals. I have the 3rd pick with them. I think Maui-Noa would have been like the guy for them. And I think it's too high to take one of the receivers for an offensive coach. It's also too high for me to take, Jeremiah Love. So now I think the Cardinals are left deciding between Spencer Fano, trading back, or taking one of the edge rushers. And that's where I think it makes my job a little simple. I'm going to take Arvell Reese and send him to Arizona. Theoretically, the best defensive player available. Like you said, the best player available might not be the guy to take, but sometimes when you have a a green dot guy at linebacker that you can help tell to control the defense while you figure out the offense as the offensive coach is a pretty valuable thing. So I'll take Arvell Reese at 3.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Cardinals, they have no direction as a team, like offensively
Yeah.
or defensively, and you got to start somewhere. So they're in a position where I think going best available does make a little bit of sense for them, just for the sole fact that you got to start somewhere. They don't have, they just don't really, they just got rid of Kyler. They're kind of seem like they're about to, and they don't, they got rid of Kyler, and Marvin Harrison Jr. hasn't quite been the guy that I think a lot of people expected. So I do feel like they don't have a direction as a team, and yeah, you got to start somewhere if you're them. So Arvell Reese, the Cardinal. That brings up the last team to have the number 1 overall pick, the Tennessee Titans. Now Cam Ward's home. They're in an interesting spot here. So when I look at this team, it's very obvious what they should build around. They have Cam Ward. That's about it. No, I'm kidding. I like Skronsky. I like J.C. Latham on the O-line. And then the wide receiver room is pretty bad. I'm not an Elick Aominar truther. I don't think he's a fine wide receiver 3 or 4, but I don't think he's anything good for a 1 or a 2. Calvin Ridley, as good as he used to be, and I think as much as a lot of people want him to be good, he just doesn't seem to have that gear that he used to have. And then they signed Wan'Dale Robinson. Again, a good wide receiver 3 or 4, but I don't think he brings you much as a wide receiver 1 or 2. To me, and then the defensive side of the ball, it's not bad. They have a couple good pieces. Jeffrey Simmons kind of being the main one, and then Jermaine Johnson as well in the D line. But both of those guys are a little bit older, so I don't think your defense is in a spot like, oh, if I draft a defensive player right now, well, you're going to lose Jermaine Johnson in a year or 2. You're going to lose Jeffrey Simmons in a year or 2, or their play is at least going to decline enough to where I don't want to mess around on the defensive side. So I think sticking offensively for the Titans makes a lot of sense. Help out Cam Ward. Let's see if we can build something there, and we'll figure out the defense down the line. Wide receiver is a big hole. I do like Jordan Tyson. I do like Carnell Tate. I do like Mekhi Lemon. I think this might be a little early for any of those guys. I like all 3 of those guys relatively equally, and I don't know if I personally want to be the NFL team to have to pick the first one.
Right.
Just because it feels like whoever picks the first one is going to be a bust, and then whoever gets stuck with the third of those 3 is going to be the best one because they're going to pan out and it's going to be great. I think I'm going to pull a hot take here. I'm going to pull an Ezekiel Elliott, and I think I'm going to go Jeremiah Love.
Wow. I like
am
it.
really off on Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. I think they are the least threatening duo in the league, and they averaged an abysmal 3 yards per carry last season. Also, Tony Pollard was supposed to be a good receiving back. Didn't really do much of that last year. Had a kind of a drops issue. And I know that because as a Tony Pollard fantasy owner, it was very frustrating. I think that you have 2 good young O-linemen and you have Cam Ward. You need something dynamic outside of him. Again, the receivers, I worry a little bit about having to pick one of those 3 because I think all of them come with question marks. Jeremiah Love just feels very foolproof to me. I think the O-line is right, and I think this helps. I think this helps Cam Ward take some pressure off of him, and it gives you something explosive in the backfield because Pollard and Tajay Spears just provide 0 threat to break more than 5 yards a run. So I'm going to take Jeremiah Love for the Tennessee Titans here.
Okay, so this is going back to do you draft a running back high? Or the debate was, do you draft him in the top 10? You draft him in the top 4. So that's a huge part right there. I can't say I hate it, though. Here's the deal with, if you're telling me that David Bailey and Reuben Bain Jr. are available at 4 for Tennessee, who just hired a defensive coach, it's going in to Robert Saleh. Whatever happened, whatever you think of him with the Jets, that was the Jets. Robert Saleh is a really good defensive coordinator. He built a really good defense when he was with the Jets. I would be shocked if both of those guys are available. He doesn't take a big swing at them, but you're also absolutely right. Your number 1 goal right now with Robert Saleh is make the job easier for Cam Ward. And their wide receivers suck. Their offensive line, not great. Their run game, pretty pedestrian.
It's awful. It's the worst in the league.
Yeah, so you need to add some sort of explosiveness there, because that's how you keep this job compared to, the reason he and Joe Douglas, again, got fired with the Jets was they got the quarterback wrong. Well, now they picked the quarterback for you last year, so you better make it right. And you got to go get offensive skill talent that can make the pick right for you. A little high for me to think, but I will say, you made the lives of New York Giants fans a lot easier because
Yeah.
the Giants, as you know, I listen to some New York radio, and there's a lot of people that are scared that the Giants are going to draft Jeremiah Love at 5. And I don't know if scared's the right word for it. I just know that there are Giants fans are nervous that the Giants are going to take another running back high after what happened with Saquon almost 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
So I do think you made their lives a lot easier. You also made my life easier because I was thinking of taking Love for the Giants at 5, knowing how much Harbaugh loves the running game. But with the 5th overall pick in the 2026 Flag for Discussion NFL mock draft, the New York Giants will select Caleb Downs. So this might be high for a safety as well. The Giants have 0 secondary help, 0 people in the secondary.
None.
So not only do you get the best guy in that you can throw in the secondary out there at 5, I think you could argue if positional value wasn't a thing in the NFL draft, Caleb Downs could be the best player in the draft. Like, point blank, period. That's a guy you could set it and forget it kind of guy. And John Harbaugh is coming from the Ravens, where he had Kyle Hamilton, who was just patrolling at safety for years for him. I think, obviously, like, they had Reed days too. Like, I think John Harbaugh wants his own guy that he can just put a blanket on and at safety and make it happen there. Caleb Downs to the Giants at 5.
I like that pick a lot. I think offensively, there's some improvements they can make, but as a whole, their offense they have enough young pieces offensively. And now that Neighbors will be healthy this year, I don't think they need to add to the offense. I think it's better for them to see how, like, this is a good prove it year for Jackson Dart, Cam Scattaboo, and then they can reassess next year. Meanwhile, I'm with you. I think their defense is 1 or 2 pieces away from being a pretty solid defense. And someone like Caleb Downs counts as 1.5 defensive players with just how versatile and how good he is. So I like that pick for them a lot. And I that's a pick that I like for them a lot. And I think that that's something their front office would go for, which unfortunately for a lot of these teams at the top, those usually do not align. But which is, again, is why they pick up here a lot. But this is a case where it does. All right, pick number 6. I have to, you're sticking me with the Cleveland Browns. It feels like whatever they do will never pan out. I'm going to try my best to help them. I'll start here. I think the Cleveland Browns defense is pretty solid. It's been pretty solid the last couple of years.
Pretty hard to be bad with Myles Garrett.
Yes, he's a freak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade Myles Garrett to Detroit. No, kidding. I'd love that. I like their defense. I think their defense is solid. If you watch any AFC North games, they, like, all their losses in the NFC or AFC North are like 13-10, 13-6, 10-3. They have a good defense, and their defense keeps them in games. They have such an inability to provide anything offensively, and I think that's where they need to go here. I like the idea of trying out Shadur for another year and see what he can give you. Am I guaranteeing he's going to be good? No. But I think that's the move, to try it for one more year. It's better than Dylan Gabriel. It's better than drafting a guy here. I actually really like Harold Fannin. I think he provides a good dynamic tight end. And I like their running backs. Judkins was good. Sampson was solid. The O-line and the wide receiver room is pretty obviously, to me, where they need to go with this pick. Guards, there's not an elite guard in this draft that is anything worth a top 15 pick. So we're going to wait there. Tackle Spencer Fano from Utah. This could be a little early for him, but he's very intriguing. But I think they deeply need wide receiver help, because I think a really good wide receiver is the difference between, so, like, having Judkins and Fannin, and then having Judkins, Fannin, and X receiver. That if you have a dynamic tight end, a dynamic running back, and a dynamic receiver, you infinitely increase the odds of production. So I'm gonna take the wide receiver rooms are tough. I really like Lemon, Tyson, and Tate. I think all 3 provide a high level, like, ceiling, high floors. I'm going to stick with the in-state guy. I'm going to go Carnell Tate. He's got a lot of Ohio State teammates on this Browns team. He's also, again, it's an easy change for him, easy change for the fan base. I also think he has the safest floor. I think Tyson is the biggest disparity of floor ceiling. I think Lemon is pretty safe, and I think Tate is also very safe. So I'm just going to stick with the in-state guy.
I think Lemon has a higher current floor but lower ceiling.
I would agree.
I do think if you're the Cleveland Browns, you have one imperative this season, and it's to either prove to people that the owner was right, forcing the Shedeur Sanders pick, and that means surround him with pieces to be productive, and you hired an offensive coach, you let the defense handle itself, you got to go score 20 points a game because you haven't been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's prove to the fans who keep saying that, ignoring that, the Browns have done wrong by Shedeur. Prove to the fans that it's not the Browns that are doing wrong by him, that he's not actually as good. Like, there's so many crazy fans out there that are calling the Browns racist for not starting him early on. It was like, no, that's not what's going on. So your imperative right now is to go draft an offensive lineman, Spencer Fano, or a receiver in Cardinal Tech. I like this pick.
And that puts 3 Buckeyes in the top 6 for us, which is probably going to happen in real life too.
Oh yeah. There's going to be multiple Buckeyes. There's going to be multiple Hurricanes this round. Okay. So for me, as the Washington Commanders, their defense abysmal. Their defensive line just let everyone run through it last year. I think you could go in a lot of different directions. You could probably consider, I mean, if you're leaving Spencer Fano open for Jaden Daniels, their offensive line also didn't leave too much to be desired there. Sonny Styles, Ruben Bain, David Bailey. That's where I'm looking right now. And I want David Bailey out of Texas Tech, the edge rusher, to just wreak havoc for Dan Quinn. You have a defensive coach. Your defense was, when I say bad, that doesn't justify how bad they were last year. And you have a chance to get a guy that some people have mocked in the top 2 at 7. So people call this draft bad. I think people only call it bad because it doesn't have the 5 quarterbacks in the first round. I think every other position, edge rusher and offensive line, this draft is really good.
Yeah. This is one of the better drafts we've had in a while. Like, defensive side of the ball, it's not sexy because of the QBs, the wide receivers, and I think some people just immediately see that and chalk it up as a bad draft. But there's a lot of talent in here outside of those positions.
All right, so now we got the New Orleans Saints coming to the clock, waiting for Jace's pick. Tyler Shuck ended up somehow being a surprise good quarterback last year for the Saints. Unless you think they need to go draft a quarterback, where are they going?
Yeah, no QB for the Saints. I think they're in a good spot. They have a few, I think, very straightforward and solid options to go. The wide receiver room is not great, so they could conceivably go wide receiver, help out their young quarterback. They're in a good spot because they have a solid O-line. True, it's a good mix of like young guys like Kelvin Banks that they've drafted. Also with like Cesar Ruiz, a little bit more experience. It's a good O-line. I also they still have Alvin Kamara. They bring in Travis, as he said, Chin. Is what he said. Is
yeah, what the heck? I didn't know that.
Yeah, didn't know that until recently. And then I actually like Noah Fant and Juwan Johnson at tight end. Tyler Shuck's been good, so getting him a dynamic receiver, I think, could actually create a pretty solid offense. But similarly, the defensive side of the ball, they have a few good pieces on the D line, and if they're counting Chase Young as a linebacker, I feel like we'll call him an edge. And then like Kool-Aid McKinstry and a couple other pieces in the back end. So I think they could safely go a big-time edge rusher, a big-time linebacker, or a big-time receiver here. This is a tough one to predict. I would like a Jordan Tyson for him. Just try and go get like a big playmaker guy, because if he pans out and Shuck continues to pan out, then all of a sudden you end up with a really dynamic duo there. But I'm going to go with a guy who's very versatile on defense. I just think that they could use another D lineman. They could use another linebacker. I like the direction their offense is headed. So I'm going to go with Sonny Styles, a guy who's probably best available, or arguably one of the 2 best available players at this point in our flag for discussion mock drafts. I think he gives them dynamic edge rush ability. He's good in the run game. He's good in zone coverage. He had one of the highest tackle rates he had like the lowest of all linebackers. He had the lowest missed tackle rate. Just something I like they've got a good, like I said, the defense is solid. They've got good pieces. I think this gives them that dynamic player that could help them out defensively. And I like their offense. I think that offense is sustainable, where they don't need to go and reach for maybe a player at this pick.
So you made my job a lot easier, but
Left Jordan Tyson.
I like Sonny Styles there. Only thing I was wondering with the Saints is that Mickey Loomis, their general manager, has set them up for insane amounts of cap hits for the next several years. So if you're taking a guy here in the top 10 and you're theoretically not planning on being in the top 10 from here on out, you have to make sure you get a guy. that
Mhm.
at a position of need, which is where linebacker is a very important position, but it's like people refer to it how they refer to safeties and running backs a little bit. Is like you can get a good above average one in the second, third round, but save your first round pick for like the top tier edge rusher, top tier left tackle type guy. But with that said, I always love it when offensive coaches take the best defensive guys in the first round, because that means they like their defensive coordinator. They're like, you go worry about that. I'm going to make sure we score
Yeah.
points. Yeah, I'll get you the pieces. You take care of it, but I'm going to make sure we score points. And the way to win in the NFL today is not how the Steelers do, is spending the most in the league on defense. Teams today allocate their money on offense, and they leave their defense to rookies and like some high level contracts that they can. Like, look at the Rams. They drafted right, and they're right back here with all those young guys. But
Mhm.
like I said, you made my job easy with the Chiefs. I was considering, would they take Jeremiah Love? They signed Kenneth Walker. So they were out of a running back. Do they want Spencer Fano now, because he's still on the clock as an offensive tackle? I mean, he's still on the board. I would say this is where you go get your Chris Jones replacement. Chris Jones still on the team. Chris Jones is still productive, but coming off of a down year a little bit. This is a place where I was considering either Kenyon Sadiq at tight end to be the Travis Kelce replacement, or Ruben Bain Jr. at defensive end to go be the Chris Jones. I mean, they don't play the exact same position. Chris Jones is more of like the defensive tackle inline guy. Ruben Bain's off the edge. But you got to go get a bull rusher that can get after the quarterback for you, and I'm going to take Ruben Bain.
I like that. That he's such a no-brainer at this point in the draft that it's hard to go wrong with someone that good.
Yeah, he's nasty, and I think the Chiefs aren't planning on picking up here again. So you got to make sure the guys that you're losing in the next couple of years, or who might be getting old, and you want to probably cut. You want to make sure you have a replacement for them.
I agree. And you make a great point talking about the overlap that you're going to get with a Chris Jones and a Ruben Bain, because those teams that tend to pick consistently at the top make the mistake where they draft the replacement a year or two late. They draft the replacement once the main guy is left. And at that point, you're just moving laterally, hoping to become that without any of the mentorship or leadership that comes with it. But when you draft with an overlap, it gives you 1 to 2 years of having both, which first and foremost is fantastic to get that elite level of play for a year or two. But you also get the mentorship and the leadership and the training for a year or two, which I think just exponentially increases the chance that this player becomes what you're hoping that they do. So I really like that pick, and I can tell you what, the Chiefs them having this pick this is just my NFL fandom now. It's so fun yet frustrating the Chiefs have a pick like this, because they're going to get an immediate impact player. And like you were mentioning, Ruben Bain is someone who's going to immediately impact and make this defense elite. If they decide to go with Fano as a tackle, he's immediately going to help protect Mahomes and make that offense elite. If they decide to get Tyson or Lemon, they are immediately going to have an elite offense again. They could reach for Kenyon Sadiq and try to replace Kelce. No matter who they pick here, it just feels like, man, they're going to be so good again, which it's fun when the Chiefs are good because I like the big profile games they play in, but also it's frustrating because they're so good and they're a hard team to beat. They just can't really go wrong. I really like that pick. I think that Ruben Bain, it would just be a beast in Kansas City. All right.
Absolutely. Go for it.
That leads us to pick number 10. The Denver Broncos, or the Denver Broncos, the Cincinnati Bengals. Sorry, I was like looking ahead at the draft and I got all the way down here at the bottom. Cincinnati Bengals. So this is an interesting team. They have two glaring needs, just any pulse on the defense whatsoever at any level. All levels stink. They lost Trey Hendrickson. Or I think they could go O-line. I like Chase Brown. I like what he offers. I'm definitely not taking a running back at this point if it's not Jeremiah Love. Obviously, the receiver room, they still have T. Higgins. They still have Jamar Chase. I like Yoshi. Their tight end room's okay. It's good enough for now. The defense is abysmal, and the offensive line is bad. For years on end, we've known the Bengals have had a bad offensive line, and they keep refusing to address it. If I were the GM, that's what I'm addressing. I think Burrow is your prized possession. The only way you lose him is by running him out of town. How do you run him out of town? Keep refusing to protect him, because at some point he's going to get sick of it. The defense is so bad that no matter who you pick here, I don't think it really positively impacts the defense. It's going to take years to rebuild that defense, not just one draft pick. Whereas that offense, one draft pick on that offensive line that pans out could be the difference between Joe Burrow taking 35 sacks and you lose 8 games to Joe Burrow taking 18 sacks and you lose 6 games. And that is much more valuable to a team like this. And if you're trying to get into contract negotiations with Joe Burrow, it's going to be a lot easier to keep him in Cincinnati when you have Spencer Fano sitting there protecting him than if he's like, well, we lost Trey Hendrickson because you refused to pay him. And then you drafted another edge rusher that, guess what? In 4 years, you're going to refuse to pay him. He's going to leave. So I'm going to go with Spencer Fano here. I know people have been mocking him a little bit lower in the first round, just out of team needs, but I think he's too valuable. If I'm the Bengals, you need to get Burrow help. This is the last year I think Burrow is willing to put up with a bad O line, so we're gonna do it, and we're gonna take Fano.
So that's a great pick there because, dude, have you seen where what Joe Burrow's been saying sometimes, like to the media towards the end of the season? It felt like he was retiring. It felt like he
Yeah,
lost love with football. And look, the amount of injuries that guy's been through, the amount of time that he has to spend in rehab, you kind of get it. You feel for the guy. I mean, he makes plenty of money doing it, but still, like, you get why he would be so distraught with all of this. With that said, Spencer Fano, great singer too, by the way. You should look that up.
really.
I like the pick. You're right. Defense, you can't necessarily fix right away. So why spend one pick on him? Go protect Burrow. You're paying both your top receivers, which is nuts as you are right now. You better be cheap and effective on the offensive line. So I like that. All right. For the Dolphins, I'm kind of struggling where the Dolphins should go here because they feel like a team without a direction. They traded they cut their quarterback. They brought in Malik Willis, is promising, but then they like traded Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Their offensive line is not great, but now the two best offensive linemen that I would want at 11 are gone at this point. So I think the Dolphins, now you got to look at like defense. Is there a defensive player like Mansour Delane's available, but are they a corner away from being good? I don't think so. So
No,
I like in my opinion, I would probably just try to set it and forget it with like a receiver type guy for the Dolphins. Now it just depends on who you like more, Mekhi Lemon or Jordan Tyson. And who's going to give Malik, because if they were right about Malik Willis, if they think Malik Willis is going to be awesome and he just needed playing time, you got to go get a guy that can like match his level right away. I think that's where Mekhi Lemon comes into play. Like I said, higher floor, maybe lower ceiling than a Cardinal Tate or a Jordan Tyson, but you know that he's going to be reliable for Malik Willis.
I love that pick. I think that's absolutely the right pick for them. If you're gonna bring it, if they paid a lot of money for Malik Willis, I'll start here.
And then they traded
They
his two
get
best receivers.
Yeah, they paid him as if they're like, oh, we're guaranteeing this guy is going to be a bona fide star QB. And then, yeah, they get rid of his two best receivers right after that. Very, very interesting front office decisions from Miami. I think you're right. This is the one case where like replacing what you've lost is important, because if you pay all this money for a backup quarterback with the idea of like he's going to come in and be a starter, you better have starter caliber players around him, because you can't
Yeah.
expect a perennial backup QB to just randomly figure out how to be a starter with a bunch of bums, for lack of a better word. Mekhi Lemon at least gives him something to throw to, and as a fan, something to watch. And I'm with you. When a defense is as bad as it is, like Miami's, one draft pick just feels so like hopeless, and especially with corners are so finicky because in the way that they can be elite one year and then just fall off the face of the earth the next, or vice versa. You can have a corner who is bad for 3 years and then just randomly figures it out. I say randomly, obviously there's factors that go into it, but just kind of figures it out all of a sudden. So they're a little bit more volatile. And
Now,
when you don't really have a direction, there's no reason to do that.
now I'll say this: the Dolphins are a trade up candidate for me. They have 2 picks this draft in the first round, so I don't know if necessary. I mean, the next one's in the late 20s, so value is a little bit less there. But I don't know. Like, let's say that the top 5 goes how it goes, or the top 4 goes how it goes with our mock. The Dolphins would be that team that you would think maybe package both first rounders to trade up so they can go get a difference, go get maybe like a David Bailey, go get a Sonny Styles, go get like a difference maker. They just hire a new defensive coach. They brought in Jeff Hafley from the Packers, college, by the way, Boston College former head coach who left to go be the DC of the Packers. They brought in their GM right now is from the Packers system too. So they're gonna I think they might be aggressive this draft, or they could decide, all right, we can take 2 defensive players in the first round and see how fast we can rebuild this team. It depends on if they want quantity or quality. So they're a trade up team for me. All right. We're about 40 minutes into this. We've gotten through top 11. I think we can go a little faster.
We'll start cooking. Luckily, these teams are getting better now, so it's a little bit more straightforward with the picks. Like Cowboys, pick number 12. Pretty straightforward. The offense is very solid. They have a good O-line. I like the quarterback. I like Dak. They have a great wide receiver room. They have good running backs. The defense to the side of the ball is obviously what the Cowboys need. And then there's a handful of good ones. I think at this point, if you're the Cowboys, you can just go best available defensively. Right now, PFF will tell you that's Mansour Delane. I'm going to take him. I think he's safe. He's been a very solid college football starter for the last couple of years. There's no reason for me to believe he can't at least be a formidable corner for the first year or two in Dallas.
Yeah.
And that's they need that position. They've been just abysmal in coverage. So I'm going to start there with them and take Mansour Delane. He will be a Cowboy in the flag for discussion mock.
I like that pick. The Cowboys offense was awesome last year. Their head coach, Jesus, Weiss's
Schottenheimer.
Schottenheimer. Schotty surprised a lot of people. Like they were very it helps when you have Dak, Pickens, and CeeDee Lamb, but the offense was really good last year. Their defense was struggling a little bit. They fired their defensive coordinator. Their defensive line's looking pretty good for this year. You know what's weak for them? It's corner. I think Mansour Delane or Jermod McCoy. This is where the Cowboys and the Rams are going to go back to back if both of them are available. So with the Rams don't have many glaring needs at 13. It's amazing that they have the 13th overall pick from Atlanta. It's funny because last year's they traded for that pick. And I was like, how could the Falcons do it? And the guy they ended up picking ended up working out. So I can't really be mad at it. But I was like, there's no way that this is going to work out well for the Falcons compared to the Rams. The Rams, I'm going to take Jermod McCoy, try to fill in. They're so young and so weak in their secondary. They need to really fill that hole. So I'm going to take Jermod McCoy for the Rams. Like I said, the Cowboys and the Rams right now feel like they're going to go back-to-back corner if both Delane and McCoy are available. It just depends on which guy the Cowboys like better and which guy the Rams like better.
Completely agree with you. Those are two teams, pretty straightforward needs. Ravens coming in at pick 14. They have the exact opposite situation. Defensively, especially with hiring Jesse Minter, I think defensively they have a lot of talent and they have a good defensive coach in place. I don't think he'll go the defensive side of the ball. Like I said, I think they have a lot of talent there. And at this point, I do think a lot of the top end defensive talent will have been draft picked. If any of, the Reuben Baines, Sonny Styles, if any of the big time edge rushers or linebackers are alive at this point, there's a world where Minter just says, screw it, I'm going to create the world's most elite defense. But if they're not, I don't think he's going to reach for that. So I do think they'll go offensive side of the ball. When you have Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, you want to give them as much help too. So the O-line is a big need. They have a handful of needs among the entire O-line. And then the wide receiver rooms is interesting there. A lot of people are high on Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. A lot of people aren't. So I don't really know where Jesse Minter lies on that. Jordan Tyson could be enticing if he feels like they still lack there. The one thing I will say, Jordan Tyson as a prospect, as we've talked about, he seems like he has the highest ceiling, but also the lowest floor. And if I'm the Ravens, I don't know if I want another version of that. Agreed. They're 2-win now, and that's what Rashad Bateman was. That's what Zay Flowers was. They're still navigating the NFL, so I don't know if I want another one of those. So I think I'm going to go safe and go on the O-line. Again, I don't think you can ever go wrong giving Lamar and Derrick Henry more help. Monroe Freeling is interesting. He's a tackle out of Georgia who had solid production. He started a lot at Georgia, but through the combine and pro days in the last couple of months, he's really shot up draft boards. But I'm actually going to go with, it's hilarious I'm picking him because I can never get his name right either. Oliviaga Ione, the guard out of Penn State. He was really good each last couple years at Penn State, but like his issue was this past year when Penn State took a big hit and they weren't very good. It like just kind of took his name out of the equation a little bit, but I do think that's a really good player, and he's a really good game wrecker in the run game, most importantly. We saw that 2 years ago with how good their run game was and how good he was in that. A team like Baltimore, Derrick Henry, Lamar, if you can get just a punisher in the run game anytime you can, I think you got to take it. And that shores up probably their biggest need on offense is the guard position. He can play either left or right. So I'm going with Ione out of Penn State.
I like that. Looking at it makes you debate, like, do we need to get a guard here? They just lost Isaiah Likely to the Giants. Do they want to fill that spot with a Kenyon Sadiq? So like those options are there. Their defense is solid, but it started showing some cracks last year. What about like a Dylan Thieneman type of guy? Monroe Freeling, he's shot up draft boards because of his body type and like his overall power, like his potential. But his floor is not there yet. So like I saw some people mocking him to the Rams because the Rams don't need him this year. They can just make him a number 6 offensive lineman so he can grow, get into games, and then develop with the Rams instead of being like, okay, you're a left tackle. Figure it out, buddy. There's
Yeah.
there's TJ Watt. Good luck. I would say overall I like that pick. The Bucks now. The Bucks for me are another topic where like I said, I really like Jason Light, their general manager. Him, Howie Roseman, and John Spytek from the Raiders. They all come from the same tree. They come from that Philadelphia tree. I really like what he's done overall in the years that he's been in Tampa. Baker, bottom low. He's been their quarterback. He's been productive. Their run game with Rashad White and Bucky Irving been really good as long as they can stay on the field. Wide receivers, overall, very solid. I mean, not overall, undisputably very solid. They just let Mike Evans walk because of how
That's how
good
good
Jason
they
Light
feel,
can
yeah.
draft. So with that said, defensively, I think you got to start looking at Akeem Messidor. Might be a little high, but he's a game wrecker. People gave Ruben Bain a lot of the credit because Ruben Bain was like the athletic freak, but where Ruben Bain made a play, a lot of time was because Akeem Messidor was terrorizing on the inside. Like he was making the offensive line works, and Ruben Bain got around. So Akeem Messidor, I think he would be pretty elite here. I think he would be pretty elite. I think he would go. So I know people would say this is high. I think the Lions would love to have him, and I think the Jets would love to have him. So it just depends on if the Bucks are like, we got to take him now. So Akeem Messidor at 15 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
I like that pick. I think that's when you're the Bucks. Yeah, offense is shored up. Let's try to get a guy that can help out the defense. And Messidor was really good in the run game. That's something that he excelled in more than most edge rushers because he's just a bigger body. He's a little more stout. So yeah, he's not the fun athletic freak that Bain might be, but he's an NFL body tomorrow. His ability to wreck inside. That's just something that's when you have a good offense, you just need someone on defense who you can consistently let play 3 downs and feel good about it, and that's Messidor. All right, so pick number 16, I've got the Jets again. Kind of fun that it worked out that I get them twice. In every mock draft I've looked at, everyone has the Jets with one of their 2 picks going offense and with the other one going defense. That's a good idea if you're like a middle of the road team and you're just trying to build talent. This is a really bad team that I think I'm going to double down on offense because I think when you're terrible, you need to at least force your way into some direction. And it sounds like from everything we know, they would love to live in a world where Dante Moore is a Jet or even just there's going to be a lot of high caliber QBs that come out of college next year. The Jets are pretty safely going to be picking at the top. Let's get them some help. We got him Francis Maui Noah. We have Brees Hall, and we have Garrett Wilson, who needs to stay healthy, but at the very least, he provides you a very solid wide receiver. I like Adonai Mitchell. I think he could be very explosive. I'm going to pair those 2 up with Jordan Tyson. I'm going to take him here. And ideally, you live in a world where whoever you draft next year, you're handing him the keys to an offense that has a Francis Maui Noah now, has a Brees Hall, has a Garrett Wilson, has an AD Mitchell, has a Jordan Tyson. It would at least be handing the keys to a young quarterback that has a chance to succeed. That's something that they have not done in like 20 years. So it'd be nice to see him do it. I'm going to double down on the offensive side of the ball. for the Jets, and hand it over to you for my Detroit Lions. Farbo, take good care of us, man, please.
I was
Please.
going to say, can I trade you that pick? I'll take the
That works
Chargers
too,
from
but
you.
I'm actually very curious to hear who you pick for this. But yes, if you want to trade, we can.
So, I mean, if you're looking at, I'll give you my analysis, but you can make the pick. If
Okay.
you're looking at the Lions, I think overall left tackle, offensive line, you could look there, but not at left tackle, but you could look at the offensive line. Penei Sewell obviously will lock down his spot as long as he's healthy. Jared Goff, you don't need a quarterback right now. Maybe next year. Like the problem with the Lions right now is 2 years ago they were like the young upstarts. Last year was all right. You got to go do it. And then that last year was like, okay, now we can go do it. We're not young upstarts surprising anymore. We are expected to compete this year and the next year because of your quarterback's age overall. And like the young draft picks will eventually start asking for a lot of money in Jahmyr Gibbs and Jameson Williams. You're already paying Penei Sewell a lot. You're paying Jared Goff a lot. Those guys are going to start getting really expensive. You're going to have to get rid of some of them. You got to get young again at some of the key positions. So this is where you could start looking at the offensive line position again. This is where you like Caleb Lomu, Monroe Freeling wouldn't be a bad spot here. But with that said, your defense has been hurt every single season for the last couple of years. A Keldrick Falk, pair him with an Aiden Hutchinson would be kind of fun. I don't know where are you? How am I doing with the Lions?
No, you're spot on. They're in a good spot in the sense they've locked up a lot of their young talent for years to come. I like what they have at the wide receiver position. I like what they have at the running back position. I like what they have in the back end secondary. Their glaring issues are O-line, just due to retirements that they've had the last couple of years. And then the defensive front. If they get any starting caliber player in O-line or front seven on defense, I think they're in a good spot. There's a lot of good players. It's going to depend on obviously who Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell like, but Monroe Freeling is a big body and a good name. CJ Allen's good. Kedrick Falk, you mentioned him. Cassius Howe is a highly productive guy that's down there. Kadyn Proctor is a name I've seen with the Lions. I don't think they can go wrong as long as, like I said, it's in the trenches or it's a linebacker. I'll go based on, I like the idea of a Monroe Freeling, Penei Sewell tackle tandem. I just like the size and mean, just like that is two big, mean dudes that, and a team that like Jahmyr Gibbs, that you just put a lot of money into. I like the world where we just let him eat behind them.
You can't tell me that Dan Campbell is not going to take one look at Monroe Freeling and be like, I don't care if you don't know how to play offensive line. I'm going to teach you. I need your, the least sexual way possible. He's going to say, I need your body on my team. So like, I think that's a good pick. We're in the meat and potatoes of the first round. Like you're not going to go get the high young, like destined to be star kind of guys. You are getting the guys that are high overall, very productive in college, and you're hoping the measurables plus the talent plus instincts just pan out that they are better than the guys that were drafted ahead of them. All right, 18 with the Vikings. That's back to you again.
Yeah, the Vikings they have like one of the most complete rosters. That there's zero, other than quarterback, unfortunately, there's zero like obvious gaping holes on this team. They have a really good O-line. They have really good top two wide receivers. They have Hawkinson. Running backs aren't great, but Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason aren't bad. And then the defense, just everyone on defense is solid. And then they've kept Flores. Somehow they've kept him the last 2 years, even though he's been a hot name as a head coaching candidate. And their
he is
defense
suing the NFL.
Elite. Yeah. I think they're like I said, their biggest needs are like QB, but in running back, there's no one you're taking here. And then QB, because of the capital they put into McCarthy and because they just signed Kyler Murray, I just don't see a world where they take like a Ty Simpson here. So I'm just going to go best available and also someone that I think has a really high ceiling in Dylan Thieneman. Brian Flores seems like the kind of defensive coordinator that can really utilize a Dylan Thieneman to his fullest potential, really get creative, use him like Kyle Hamilton almost in Baltimore. And this is a defense that can afford that. They have such good talent in the front seven that they can afford to get creative in the back end and try some things out. So I'm going to go Dylan Thieneman here. And I think not only is this what I would do, I think this is what will happen. And I will also say, I think if this marriage happens, Dylan Thieneman is a superstar on this Brian Flores defense.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Flores, he'll blitz every time, and he doesn't mind bringing the safeties in, blitzing from all over. Dylan Thieneman will excel. He's all over the field. Obviously, you and I are a little biased here, but I don't think that's the real reason we love him. I think he has a chance to be really, really good and in the right system, and that would be a perfect system for him. You
Yep.
made my life a lot easier. Not because I was I was deciding between two guys, but because as the Panthers general manager, I have my sights set on one guy, and
I think I have a guess.
that's also an Oregon Duck. I'm going to take Kenyon Sadiq. Try to make life even easier for Bryce Young. Obviously, this is probably the make or break year for Bryce. They got to make a decision on that 5th-year option or whether or not to extend it. And at this point, he hasn't given you a reason to extend him, but he also hasn't given you a reason to give up on him. It's just like he's kind of caught in the middle. Like maybe it's his height or his like overall physical limitations that will keep him forever being that guy. But he was productive the last couple of years after he got benched. But so now you got to keep pushing the envelope, keep getting him pieces that could help him out. So Kenyon Sadiq is easy for me at 19 for the Panthers.
I think that's huge because then you give Bryce, you can say to Bryce Young, you've got year 2 of Tet, and now we've got you Kenyon Sadiq. You've got he'll at least have some weapons. I'm not claiming they're the best weapons in the NFL, but it's enough weapons to at least give him a shot to succeed. And I think Bryce hasn't really been given. He's been very negatively judged by media and fans for someone who's been in a really difficult situation. Carolina is a team that's had such little talent, and I think he's been unfairly scrutinized for what he's done, and this would give him a shot to succeed. We'll see if he takes advantage of it.
People forget when he got drafted, Frank Reich was his coach, and I think Frank Reich's a great coach, but Frank Reich wanted CJ Stroud, and the owner and the GM overruled him, and then 3 games in, they fired Frank Reich, and Frank's like, well, what was I supposed to do? I tried to make my best, but I told you I didn't like this guy at quarterback. I wanted CJ Stroud. And CJ Stroud has multiple playoff wins under his belt. As good as Bryce Young is becoming, he's still not CJ Stroud. So Frank Reich's a little vindicated, but also you're right. Bryce Young's vindicated. He's been in an impossible situation earlier on in his career.
Yeah. The combination of lack of talent around you plus constant coaching changes. There's not been a single quarterback in NFL history that has dealt with those two things and ever overcome it. And then people will blame the quarterback for being a bust. I think it's a fit. It's Kevin O'Connell said
Kevin
this.
O'Connell.
Yeah. I was like, I know the name.
We thought
Kevin
the
O'Connell,
same guy.
Franchises fail QBs. QBs don't fail franchises. I could not agree more with that statement. I think Bryce Young's in the heat of that now. All right, pick 20. I got the Cowboys again. I love that I keep getting like the doubled up here.
Yeah.
And it looks like I'll get the Browns again too for both of their picks. So Cowboys, I went defensive side of the ball round 1 or pick 1 for them. I'm going to do it again here. So last time I went in the secondary and I went with Mansour Delane. This time I'm going to move up a little bit and I'm going to try to get a dynamic linebacker. I think back end first round's a safe time to go for him. A guy like CJ Allen out of Georgia provides an interesting profile. Not the most production I think you would like to see in college, but he has just the freak athletic traits, and he was coached by Kirby Smart, so you feel somewhat comfortable drafting a guy that was coached by him on the defensive side of the ball. He's someone that I think with the right coaching and the right mix could really become a dynamic player. Like I said, he just didn't quite have the production you'd like to see, but that's what you're picking at pick 20 versus pick 4. But I'm going to go with CJ Allen. I think he could be fun on this defense, and like I said, they just don't need offense. So we're going to stick with the defensive side of the ball.
So I have the Steelers at 21, and I have no idea where to go.
Yeah.
I think because, hear me out. I think you hire an offensive coach, you want to transition your talent to the offensive side. With that said, you got to start drafting defensive players that you can play cheap, like at a cheap contract, so you can trade your expensive defensive players. I'm not saying necessarily trade TJ Watt, but guys like him who are making so much money on the Steelers defense, you got to start getting rid of those and you got to fill in the gaps. So I'm wondering, do I take a Keldrick Falk? Or do I take the safety out of Toledo with McKeel Warren? Or do I take a shot at fixing for years mediocre Steelers offensive line? Like Kadyn Proctor, he could be that guy. Blake Miller out of Clemson, maybe he's the guy. Like, so I would like your thoughts on, like, would you prefer we draft an offensive guy to start the offensive transition, or would we rather draft a defensive guy to backfill the defensive trades that we're going to eventually make? The thing is, before I know I asked you a question, before I
No,
answer,
you're good.
I asked you to answer it. Ty Simpson's still on the board, and maybe they're going to try Aaron Rodgers back. Maybe they're going to try, what's his name, Will Howard. But Mike McCarthy's not a young guy. Pittsburgh's not a team that's used to losing. They're necessarily not an organization that's ready to fail at quarterback. Where would you go? And then I'll tell you where I would pick, because I'm like in 3 different parks here.
Yeah, I think if I'm the Steelers, I would go with a tackle, offensive tackle. My reason being is they just signed Pittman. You've got DK Metcalf. I think their running back room, not game changing, but decent. And I could see a world where their defense is relatively solid. They're just mediocre all across the board in reality. But I like the idea of setting themselves up to take a young quarterback in the next year or two. And in order to do that, you've got 2 good young receivers. I think starting the trend of like building a good offensive line to prepare for that is always going to be helpful. And I also say tackle just because I like McNeil Warren comes with question marks for me. Keldrick Falk has some question marks for me. Avion Terrell, some question marks. Cassius Howell, highly productive, but some athletic question marks of how that will translate to the NFL. But like Blake Miller, Kadyn Proctor, Max Ihenachor, all of those tackles, I'm fairly confident are going to be solid NFL tackles. In a world where Maui Noah and Fano don't exist, those guys are all probably drafted
In the top 10.
5+ picks higher. There's just so many good tackles. I think I would just take advantage of drafting a franchise tackle at pick 21 when you're going to need a young quarterback if it's not Will Howard in the next couple of years.
So when in saying that, I think you're right. I would take a tackle here and try out Will Howard unless Rodgers wants to come back. And if all else fails, you're drafting high up next year. And I know the Steelers don't want to necessarily do that, but that's part of a rebuild. It's funny. I'm looking at the PFF analysis of it, and it says most Steelers fans have chosen Denzel Boston at this position to bring in a cheaper wide receiver, which I get, but I feel like you could go and with a lot of different places here. I'm going to take the offensive tackle, Kadyn Proctor, out of Alabama to go to St. Louis, Pittsburgh. And yeah, I'm also going to draft for the Chargers if that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
So for the Chargers, they finally became the second Harbaugh brother to fire what's his name, Greg Roman, as offensive coordinator. And then the first Harbaugh brother who fired him last time just hired him back to be like some sort of quarterbacks coach with the Giants. So I expect the offense to be better next year. I expect them not to have to go into the year with their star 2 running backs, their rookie running back coming in, Omarion Hampton, getting hurt right away, and their running back that they signed blowing his eye up in a fireworks accident. So I expect the run game to be solid, but Jim Harbaugh, he's going to want to pound the rock. He's going to want to run the ball. He's going to need his offensive line to be healthy, and the offensive line was woefully injured last year and arguably just absolutely awful.
Yeah.
Especially after those Alt went down, and the other kid, the kid out of Northwestern, he's always been hurt. He went down.
Slater, Rashawn Slater.
Yeah, Rashawn Slater. There was just no like fix there. So I think here you just take your best shot at whichever one of these guys you like more. I think it's either Denzel Boston at wide receiver, get Herbert another just every down, like reliable, can make a great play, but also can catch anything, or either a Blake Miller, Max Ihenachor, or Caleb Lomu. You just need offensive line help and someone to grow instead of having to have this problem every year for a coach who emphasizes the offensive line as much as Harbaugh does. I'm going to take the kid out of Arizona State, Max.
I like that pick. Shore up the O-line that's always banged up. And worst case, move him to the interior if you can, or one of those 3 tackles they have would be able to move to the interior, and then worlds ago. Like you said, they'll have the weapons, ideally with health, and they'll have Herbert. Just get him a little bit of help on the O-line. Get the running game a little bit of help, and they should be in a good position. That's a fun team. It'll be interesting to see what they do. There's also been some people that said that's a team that we could see trade in either direction. I saw some mocks where they trade up and then try to get like one of the top wide receivers. And then I've also seen some where they trade back and try to stack up, and then they get like the Pregnon in the second round and Lomu in the second round. So I've seen a few projections of them going either way.
Which I wouldn't hate that. I wouldn't hate them taking a Pregnon in the second round, Emmanuel Pregnon, if he can make it to them. Then you take like another receiver or a defensive line. I mean, Jesse Minter got it leaving hurts, but I expect the Chargers to be good there still again next year. All right, we're in the home stretch. Let's go a little quick. You got the I got the Philadelphia Eagles. Am I picking three times in a row? All right, the Eagles, fairly easy. You gotta look for an SEC defensive lineman, right? That's pretty much all they do at this point.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I would venture to guess this is a time where Howie Roseman might be looking at wide receiver because they might be trading AJ Brown at some point. But I still don't think he would do it this early. I think Keldrick Falk is just an easy guess to go to Philadelphia. Like, keep adding to that defensive front depth.
When you're as good as they are, just keep adding to that elite D line. It suffocates everyone they play. And the rest, you don't really need anything else if you got that. All right, pick 24. I got the Browns. Also, again, another team I've picked for. I took Cardinals Tate earlier. All of their needs are pretty much on the offensive side of the ball. That's where I'm going to stick. I'm going to go down the draft board a little bit, and I'm going to take Emmanuel Pregnon here for the Cleveland Browns. He's an interior mauler. And as a team, like I said, I really do like Judkins and Sampson. And someone like Pregnon, who's maybe the best offensive lineman in this draft class when it comes to the run game and mauling dudes.
Mm-hmm.
In a conference or in the division like the AFC North, you need those kind of mean bodies in the interior. I'm going to go with Emmanuel Pregnon here. I think he really helps out that young offensive core that they're trying to build.
Do you want to take the Bears pick because you live in Chicago?
Let's do it. I have had so many conversations with Bears fans about what they want to do here. They're not used to picking back here, so they're just so confused on how to approach the situation. Yeah, they I think D-line and then back end help. Last year they had a secondary that performed really well, but a lot of it was not, I don't want to say no names, just very guys that had been acquired in varying random ways. Nobody that seemed to have a lot of pop or potential, just really had awesome years. And I know a lot of Bears fans have said they felt like that was a little bit more luck and freak than it was like consistency. So I know back end help is something that they're looking for. They did lose like Nishan Wright and a few other safeties. I'm going to go with a coverage safety to pair with Jaquan Brisker, who's a much more downhill mean safety. And I'm going to take the shot for the McNeil Warren kid out of Toledo. He's a safety. If you remember Quentin Mitchell from a couple years ago, he plays for the Eagles now. He was a DB out of Toledo, and a lot of people were nervous if he would translate just playing in the MAC, and he's been great in the NFL. So I think there's a little bit more trust in another Toledo DB. We've seen it work out once. And like I said, the Bears have Jaquan Brisker, who plays kind of that strong safety position. And he's a big body, he's physical, and he's much better in the run game and at tackling than he is in coverage. So I think they could go after a safety and that does the opposite as him. Giving them just a really good safety duo.
So now with the Bills at 26, I think this would be a curious pick for Joe Brady and the new Bills coaching staff. Do they want to fill in the offensive side like they have? Do they want to keep... Their defense was softer last year. It wasn't as good as you expect the Bills defense to be. And I think part of that was they couldn't finish plays. They couldn't get to the quarterback towards the end. And because of that, that allowed the other guys to sustain drives a little bit more, run the ball a little bit more. I'm going to take Peter Woods is still on the board. I'm going to take Cassius Howell out of Texas A&M. Just like they need to finish plays. They need to finish drives. They need to get the ball back into Josh Allen's hands. And I think that's a good way to do it for Cassius Howell.
That's a great pick. Cassius Howell is the type of guy, 3rd and 3, and you just need someone to disrupt a play and just make a play individually. He has that ability. And I feel like the Bills, like every defensive time they needed a big stop or they needed a sack, they needed someone to penetrate in the run game. They just didn't have anyone to do that. Cassius Howell, sure, he might lose the rep on 1st and 2nd down, but 3rd and 1, he's the kind of guy to just completely swim move, a tackle, get into the backfield, hit the running back for a loss, and the Bills need just a defensive game changer like that. All right, pick 2-7. We got the San Francisco 49ers, a team similar to the Vikings, not many holes as a whole. O-line, they've just been kind of old and banged up the last few years. And I think with how many weapons they have and how much talent they have, the O-line's safe bet. I think at this point, Pregnon is probably who they're praying falls. Obviously, he didn't for us. So at this point, I like Caleb Lomu out of Utah, the other tackle. And I also, Blake Miller is a really good prospect, has all of the measurables and the footwork and everything. Just production wasn't great at Clemson. But again, it's hard to judge that because Clemson as a whole wasn't very good. And you can't really blame one guy for that when everything went wrong that it did. I think the Niners are going to take Blake Miller out of Clemson. I think he's a very good prospect. He seems like a pretty safe prospect as well. And I think the Niners could use something like that right now. So we'll go Blake.
They need to have a succession plan for Trent Williams.
Mm-hmm.
The Niners have, like, if you look at it, it's a dumb thing because if obviously they're better with Trent Williams on the field than without, but they're significantly better with Trent Williams on the field than without. So they need to have someone who can come and learn under him and take over because Trent Williams is aging and his contract's almost done. I like the Blake Miller pick. Houston, I would say, needs an offensive lineman almost just as bad. This is where you have to really be in the weeds on the draft. Is this the spot that Houston would say, there's no guard or offensive lineman that I want at 28? Let's trade out of the first round, go to early seconds, give another team 2 firsts, and maybe take a better piece there. But right now, the best players available are the Kadyn McDonald defensive lineman out of Ohio State. Avion Terrell's really good. I'm surprised he hasn't been taken yet. I think Kansas City is eyeing Avion Terrell with the next pick. But I mean, yeah, if you're looking at this, Caleb Lomu is pretty much, he might be a reach, but I think he's where Houston would go in this scenario.
I think so too. He seems like a very safe offensive lineman out of Utah. I think you can kind of safely project that for him. Yeah, you were spot on with Kansas City at pick 29. I think there's 2 obvious directions they would go, especially after you had taken Ruben Bain. They'll leave them with 2 options: wide receiver or DB. It just depends at this point in the draft, between Avion Terrell, Omar Cooper, Denzel Boston, and Casey Concepcion. Who do they like more out of those 4 guys? Me personally, I really like Omar Cooper. I think he pans out to be really solid. I also do think Avion Terrell is going to pan out to be solid. I think the Chiefs are a really good roster, meaning they don't need to double up on defense or double up on offense. It just kind of depends. Do they think that Xavier Worthy in year 3 pans out to be really good, or is he going to continue to just be a flash player? This is a tough call. I'm going to go Omar Cooper here, purely out of I really like him. I think he's going to have a special NFL career. And he was one of those guys at Indiana that every time they needed a big play, he just always seemed he could make a man miss. He would just make a crazy catch. And I think that's kind of what the Chiefs are looking for. Just that big time playmaker in a crunch moment, someone you can throw a 3rd and 5 out route to, and they'll find a way to get it. He kind of strikes me as that guy, and I think he could be a fun blanket for Mahomes.
I like that. I will say I think Omar Cooper is a good pick there, especially when they've been so aggressive there. But I thought that they would be a little bit more aggressive with an Avion Terrell type guy because they traded Trent McDuffie.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to backfill that secondary hole. But overall, did that all make sense? Miami Dolphins, why did I get stuck with them twice? This is unfair.
Their need is everything.
The first time with them, I took Mekhi Lemon. Here, I think you take best player available. So that's probably, like you said, the positional values, the direction might not matter for a team like the Dolphins that just have everything of need. So you draft a receiver. I wouldn't hate taking Denzel Boston too, just putting both of them on the field with Malik Willis. I like Kadyn McDonald a lot. I'm going to bring Kadyn McDonald in to start filling, because Jeff Hafley's a defensive coach. Start filling in that defensive line.
Yeah. I like that pick. This is the part in the draft too where teams are just kind of trying to fill those sort of holes, or just take guys that they feel like are safe and that they like. And Kadyn McDonald seems like a good fit there in Miami. All right. Pick 31, the New England Patriots, Super Bowl losers of this past year. very good roster and a young roster too. I don't think there's like a glaring hole or need. Maybe O-line play. If you could draft experience with like that would be something I'm sure they would love to have. But they can kind of go in a few directions here. I think if Avion Terrell in real life falls this far, I could see them go in that direction. I could also see TJ Parker, Peter Woods, Caleb Banks. Those are some really good D linemen here. I'm going to go down the board a little bit just because I like this guy a lot personally. I'm gonna give them Lee Hunter here. Out of Texas Tech, their front seven was just so elite that he was a guy that didn't get talked about a lot. But in that Oregon game, he was actually the only D lineman of every single team that they faced all season that felt like Pregnon met a match with. And even in Indiana, who kicked Oregon's butts twice, Pregnon still was like the only O lineman kind of holding his own in that game. But Lee Hunter kind of surprisingly gave him a run for his money. Again, the only guy in college football that did that. So I'm gonna take that kind of hard-nosed, mean style of football and bring it into New England. So I think that's something they would like. Also, a huge body. If you remember Glory New England days, they always just had some massive interior D lineman that ate everything up, and he kind of strikes me as that.
I think everyone expects because of Will Campbell's performance as in that Super Bowl that they would take offensive line. But I like this Lee Hunter pick. He's the type of guy that Mike Vrabel would just love.
Mm-hmm.
Makes my job easy. AJ Terrell, bring and welcome your younger brother into the NFL. Avion Terrell is going to play for the Seattle Seahawks. He might take some snaps away from Tariq Woolen, but
I think Woolen is gone. No, didn't he? So they need to replace him anyways.
Regardless, I think that. Sorry, my dog was whining. 1 second. Okay, I think, and I'll cut all that out. I think that Avion Terrell, he's just another chess piece for Mike McDonald's defense, and he's just going to make them that much more nasty. And this is where I thought Mike McDonald I think Mike McDonald might take a Peter Woods, just put more bodies on that defensive line, or like an Avion Terrell if he's available. So I like him there. All right, that's how the first round of the NFL draft will go. Let us know whether you think it's where we got wrong, where we were right, and I hope you don't hear my dog whining behind me. Thank you so much for listening, Jace. Do you have any comments?
It was a lot of fun doing the projected drafts. Like I said, I genuinely believe that for some of these teams, I would trust us more than their GMs. I see a world where so many of these GMs just go best available. Like I said at the beginning, I don't need to do the whole spiel again. But I do think there's a world where a lot of these teams, the top, go best available. And then next year, at the same time, when we do this again, they will all be back at the top. And they have to fill this hole again, the same hole they had the year before. Too long didn't read. Let Farbode and I make your draft picks if you're a bad NFL franchise.
Exactly. Well, that was a lot of fun. We're going to definitely do this more. We're going to obviously talk about the draft as it's leading up. It's only in a couple weeks. Thank you so much for listening. I got to bounce, but make sure you're following us on Twitter at F4Discussion, TikTok at Flag4Discussion. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts at Flag4Discussion. My dog is whining like crazy because I think she just saw her mom walk into the house.
Yeah, we got to get Harper out here.
Come here. There you go. There's the whining.
Look at that.
All right. So, with that said, for myself, Farbode Merkazi, my dog, Harper, and my lovely partner, Jace Hatfield, thank you so much for listening. This has been Flagged for Discussion.